Buongiorno tutti quanti e benvenuti in Italian for Beginners. Today we'll be talking about the passato prossimo for verbs that are conjugated with essere. If you're following this course, you'll find it really useful to have the textbook so you can follow along and do the exercises and review, etc. The book that I'm using is Prego, An Invitation to Italian by Graziana Lazzarino. I'm using the 8th edition since the early editions are no longer in print. This is available through Amazon in the US and Australia and probably other countries as well. And if you're in Australia, you can also find it on Booktopia. So it is a little expensive. I encourage you to shop around, but I also strongly encourage you to pick it up if this is a course that you'd like to follow more. Nella lezione precedente abbiamo discusso del passato prossimo, gli usi e le forme di verbi coniugati con avere. In questo video discutiamo dei verbi coniugati con essere. Oggi non ripasso gli usi del passato prossimo, quindi se non sai quali siano, è bene guardare prima il video precedente. Cominciamo con il piccolo dialogo in cima a pagina 118. Marianna. Ciao Carla, siete già tornati dalle vacanze? Carla. Io e Antonio siamo partiti insieme la settimana scorsa e siamo andati al mare. Io sono rimasta 3 giorni e sono tornata ieri per lavorare. Antonio invece è rimasto. Beato lui. So here you can see underlined the forms of verbs that are in the passato prossimo conjugated with essere. So you'll probably see a couple of differences here compared to the passato prossimo with avere, primarily that instead of using a conjugated form of avere, you're using a conjugated form of essere. So I want to dive into the nuances of what all the differences are. So first of all, most verbs are conjugated using avere. So when in doubt, avere is usually your best bet. However, many common verbs use essere. There are also some clues that you can use to guess which verb is used to conjugate which verb. So if for a main verb that involves motion, inactivity, or a change of state, that usually indicates they're conjugated with essere. So, sono andata al mare. I went to the beach. That's motion. Luigi è rimasto a casa. Luigi stayed home. So that's maybe inactivity. And finally, il lago è gelato l'inverno scorso. The lake froze last winter. So again, that's a change of state. Another really common one that I didn't put on this slide is nascere, to be born. So we would say sono nata il 15 febbraio. I was born February 15th. So let's go into a little more detail about the form of these verbs in the passato prossimo. So there's a little more work to do compared to verbs conjugated with avere. When a verb is conjugated with essere, its past participle has to agree in gender and number with the subject of the verb. So one way to think about this is that when a verb is conjugated with essere, it kind of becomes an adjective. You can think of it as though the past participle is treated as an adjective that refers to the subject of the verb. So, siamo andati al bar. So, whereas the masculine singular form of andato would be used if it was conjugated with avere, since it's conjugated with essere, andati has to refer to the subject. So in this case, that would be we, masculine plural, went to the cafe. Remember also, and I've discussed this earlier, but it's worth reviewing, that the masculine plural is used for any group that contains a man. So if there are 100 women and 1 man, it would be siamo andati. Only if it's all women would it be siamo andate. So that was actually the next example. I didn't even see that on the slide. On the other hand, you would have Piero è andato al bar. Piero went to the cafe. And that's masculine singular, so ends in O. And finally, the feminine singular would be Antonia è andata al bar. So these are kind of the 4 main forms of the past participle that you'll see. And yeah, so you'll notice that they're the same as an adjective that ends in O in the masculine singular. So think about an adjective like rosso. We would have rossa as the feminine singular, rosse as the feminine plural, and rossi as the masculine plural. And the past participles are the same. So here are a couple of examples of the verb tornare, which is conjugated with essere, just looking at all of the possible forms. So I wanted to make a quick note on tornare, in case I haven't mentioned this before, but tornare is used not only to mean to return, but also to come back or to go back. So it's not necessarily, in English, to return sounds a little formal, and tornare does not. Tornare is a typical verb, and you'll see that a lot in Italian, that it will use a single verb to express what we would use a phrase for. So here are the conjugations. Io sono tornato, or io sono tornata. Tu sei tornato, or tu sei tornata. So lui or lei, and in this context, I want to be clear that this lei would be a second person singular addressing a man. So lui or lei addressing a man would be lui o lei è tornato. On the other hand, if you have lei, or if you have formal lei addressing a woman, then that would be lei è tornata. For the noi form, it would be siamo tornati for a masculine or mixed group, and siamo tornate for a group of all women. Voi, it would be siete tornati, again for a group that's all masculine or mixed, and siete tornate for a group of all women. And same thing with loro, singular, loro plural, or loro second person plural, which is very formal and you hardly ever hear it. So loro sono tornati for a masculine or mixed group, and loro sono tornate for a group of all women. So here are a few of the common verbs that are conjugated with essere. It's worth trying to memorize these, but you'll also really pick it up quickly as you go and as you see them used. So there are a couple of these that have irregular participles, and I've put an asterisk next to those participles so you can see that those are not formed in the same way that we normally form a past participle. So for andare, we have andato, andati, andata, and andate. For arrivare, which again is to arrive, but also means to get there, to get here, etc. The past participle would be arrivato, arrivati, arrivata, or arrivate. Diventare, to become, has the past participle diventato, diventati, diventata, and diventate. That's a typo on the slide, so please take note that the feminine plural of diventato is in fact diventate. Entrare is another one, to enter. Also, to be more idiomatic in English, to come in or to go in. Has the past participle entrato, entrati, entrata, and entrate. Essere has an irregular past participle, stato, stati, stata, and state. Morire, to die, has an irregular past participle as well. Morto, morti, morta, and morte. Nascere, to be born. Nato, nati, nata, and nate. Partire, to leave, has the past participle partito, partiti, partita, and partite. So here are a couple of additional examples. Rimanere, which has an irregular participle as well. That participle is rimasto, rimasti, rimasta, or rimaste. Stare, to be or to stay, has the past participle the same as essere, which is stato, stati, stata, and state. Uscire, to go out. The past participle is uscito, usciti, uscita, and uscite. Venire, to come, that has an irregular participle as well. The participle is formed as if the verb were an ere verb, but as you can see, it's venire, so an ire verb. So that participle is venuto, venuti, venuta, and venute. Finally, crescere, to grow or to grow up. Both of those are possible meanings, to grow or to grow up. And its participle, which is regular, is cresciuto, cresciuti, cresciuta, or cresciute. So I mentioned a couple of this in the previous slides, so I'm going to try to be quick here. The verb arrivare means to arrive, as I mentioned, and in English we would often say to get here or to get there, which don't have any exact equivalents in Italian other than arrivare. So you can think of that as meaning to get here or to get there. Prepositions used with arrivare are the same as the ones used with andare. So you should have learned that in one of the previous lessons, that we have certain prepositions used with certain places. So, sono arrivata a teatro alle 7 di sera. I arrived, or I got to the theater at 7 in the evening. Siete già arrivati in centro? Have you already gotten downtown? So, you can see that, like andare, the preposition changes depending on where you're arriving. Entrare, kind of the same deal. It means to come in or to go in, which that's the only verb that means those things in Italian. So it doesn't have quite the same formality to it that entrare would that to enter would in English. Entrare goes with the preposition in. Laura e Antonio sono entrati nell'edificio. So Laura and Antonio went in the building. Cristina è entrata nel bar. So Cristina went into the bar, or went into the cafe. So it's important to distinguish this from andare or arrivare, where it would be al bar. With entrare, it's nel bar. And the same deal with teatro. Siamo entrate nel teatro. We, feminine plural, walked into the theater. So by comparison, we would say a teatro with andare or arrivare, but with entrare, we use in. Nascere. Nascere is kind of an interesting verb. So in English, we use the passive voice for to be born. In Italian, on the other hand, to be born is an active verb. Centinaia di bambini nascono ogni giorno. Hundreds of children are born every day. So it's tempting for Americans or other English speakers to use the passato prossimo to try and make it into a passive verb, in the sense of centinaia di bambini sono nati ogni giorno. But that would mean hundreds of children were born every day. So essere nato is the passato prossimo, and it means to have been born. Sono nata, or sono nato a Napoli. I'm going to give some masculine examples too. So I was born in Naples. I gemelli sono nati il 3 dicembre. The twins were born on December 3rd. So yeah, nascere works like any other active verb in Italian. Uscire, this is a common verb and one that's really useful. So uscire can be translated to exit, to go out, or to leave. Siamo usciti di casa alle 6. We left the house at 6. Uscire always has the sense of going out of a place or exiting a place. If you only want to emphasize leaving, you're going to want to use partire. So, sono usciti dall'ufficio. They left the office, meaning they exited the building. Sono partiti dalla festa prima di mezzanotte. They left the party before midnight. So here there's not so much of a sense of they walked out the door. It's more they just left. Uscire can also mean to go out in the sense of to hit the town or to date. So, il sabato sera esco con le amiche. So, you can see that this is an irregular verb in this case. Il sabato sera esco con le amiche. Saturday nights I go out with my friends, and those friends are female friends. Hai sentito che Rita esce con Giovanni? Did you hear Rita is going out with Giovanni? So you can see that that means to date in that case. Uscire usually goes with the preposition da, but there are a few expressions where it uses something different, such as uscire di casa is a really common one that you'll use a lot. Crescere. So crescere means to grow, as in le piante crescono. The plants are growing. It can also mean to grow up, in the sense of I miei figli sono cresciuti anni fa. My children grew up years ago. Notice that in the participio passato, you will want to add an I before the uto ending. So it's cresciuto. And the reason for that is because you want it to be cresciuto, not crescuto, like it would be without the I. Oddly enough, this doesn't happen in the present tense. So crescono, cresco. Those kinds of things. Finally, I think this is the last one, essere and stare. So essere is to be and stare is to stay. On the other hand, you can also, in some cases, use stare to mean to be. I mean, a great example would be come stai? How are you? So both of these verbs have the past participle stato. And in order to determine which verb is being used, you need to kind of figure it out from context. So, sono stata 3 giorni a casa. I stayed home for 3 days. On the other hand, sei mai stato a Roma would mean, have you ever been to Rome? So, yeah, and again, for how are you? Buongiorno, professoressa. Come sta? How are you? All right, that's it. That was kind of a long one. But here are the compiti and the next lesson. So the homework for today is the esercizi on pages 119 to 120. The exercise key is linked in the video description, so once you do the exercises, you can check your answers there. And finally, the next lesson is going to be about the verbs conoscere and sapere. These verbs are similar. They both mean to know, but they mean it in a different sense. Additionally, they have special meanings in the passato prossimo. So we'll go over those and discuss how to use these verbs in the next lesson. So thanks again for watching Italian for Beginners. If you'd like to continue following this course, please subscribe so you won't miss the next video. And I will see you at the next lesson. Ciao!